Sherlock Holmes, The Speckled Band by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Chapter 1. Before Her Wedding. It is 1883 in London, and we are at 221B Baker Street. Sherlock Holmes is at home with his good friend, Dr. Watson. Mrs. Hudson, the servant, comes into the room.
Mr. Holmes,
She says,
there is a young woman at the door. She wants to see you.
Of course.
Holmes says. A woman of about 30 walks into the room. Her hair is beginning to go white, and her face is older than her years.
Please, sit down.
Holmes says.
Are you cold? Would you like a hot drink?
I'm not cold.
The woman answers.
I'm tired, and I'm afraid. Oh, Mr. Holmes, can you help me? I can't give you any money now, but in 6 weeks I marry. After that, I can give you money for your work.
It doesn't matter about that now.
Holmes smiles.
Now sit down and tell me your story.
My name is Helen Stoner, and I live with my stepfather. His name is Dr. Grimsby Royalette.
Ah, yes, the Royalettes of Stoke Moran.
Holmes says.
I know them. They are an old, important family.
They aren't very important now.
Helen says.
They have the big old house at Stoke Moran, it's true, but it needs a lot of work. My stepfather lives on my mother's money. She is dead, and my poor sister is dead too.
Your sister?
Holmes asks.
Yes, my sister Julia.
Holmes thinks for a minute.
Now I remember the story of that family. Grimsby Royalette goes to India, and he's an important doctor in Calcutta for many years. He marries a woman with 2 young children. One day, there is a robbery in his house. Royalette is angry with one of his servants. He hits him, and the man dies. Royalette is in prison in India for a long time. When he comes out, he cannot work, and he goes back to England with his family. His wife dies when her daughters are 2 years old. The little girls go to live with their stepfather at his family's old house. The family live happily for some years. Miss Stoner, why are you afraid?
Holmes asks.
My stepfather is a different man now, a very unhappy man. He is always angry, and everybody is afraid of him, not only me. His only friends are the gypsies. They sleep near the house. He sometimes goes away with them for many weeks. When he comes back, he doesn't speak for days. He brings animals from India, and he puts them in the garden. A cheetah and a baboon are living there now. Nobody wants to visit us. It's terrible.
So you are alone with your stepfather?
Holmes says quietly.
Yes, Julia is dead. Dead for 2 years, and only 2 weeks before her wedding.
Helen says sadly.
I want to talk to you about her, Mr. Holmes. I can't stop thinking about her death these days. I feel very alone in that big house. My days are long, and I can't sleep at night because I see her poor face.
Holmes looks carefully at the young woman.
Tell me about your sister's death, Miss Stoner,
he says. Chapter 2. The Old House.
I remember everything very well.
Miss Stoner says.
Imagine that big old house. Our bedrooms are on the ground floor. The first bedroom is Dr. Roylette's, the second is Julia's, and the third is my room. All three have doors to the corridor, and their windows look over the garden. That terrible night, Julia is in my room. She can't sleep because Dr. Roylette is in his room and, as usual, he has his Indian incense. Julia can smell the incense from her room, and she doesn't like it. Julia is going to marry soon, and we are talking about the wedding. I am happy for her, but I don't want to be alone at Stoke Moran. At 11 o'clock, before she goes to bed, she asks me a question. Helen, do you ever hear a whistling noise at night? I sometimes hear it at 3 o'clock in the morning. Perhaps it comes from the next room or from the garden. No, I say, but I usually sleep better than you. It's nothing, Julia. Forget about it. Good night, my dear. That night is different, and I don't sleep well. I feel ill, and I can hear the rain against my window. At 3 in the morning, there is a terrible cry. It's my sister! I run from my room into the corridor. I hear a whistling noise, and then a metallic noise. Julia is standing at the door of her room. Her face is white and very afraid. I run to her and I take her in my arms. She cries, "Helen, it's the band, the Speckled band." They are her last words. I call for my stepfather and he runs out of his room. He gives her water and calls for the doctor, but nothing can help Julia. My poor sister dies soon after that. The police don't find any marks on her body. Oh, Mr. Holmes, her death is very, very strange.
And what do you think, Miss Stoner?
Holmes asks.
I don't know. Perhaps the gypsies are the Speckled band. But our windows have bars on them because Dr. Roylette is afraid of robberies. Every night we lock our doors. Nobody can go into our rooms. I am here with you now, Mr. Holmes, because 2 years after Julia's death, strange things are happening again. A dear friend, Percy Armitage, wants to marry me. My stepfather is not against the wedding. Some men are working in the house, so I am sleeping in Julia's old room. I often sleep badly because I think a lot about my sister. Imagine my feelings at 3 o'clock this morning when I hear a strange whistling noise. I get up quickly and light the lamp, but there is nothing in the room. After that, I can't sleep, so I take the train to London, and here I am.
I want to go to Stoke Moran today.
Holmes says.
I must see the house. Is this a good time?
Miss Stoner smiles.
Yes, my stepfather is in London all day. I am going back home on the 12 o'clock train, so I can see you there this afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Holmes. I feel much better now.
Chapter 3. Dr. Grimsby Royalette.
What do you think of all this, Watson?
Holmes asks.
It's very strange, Holmes. On the night of her death, Julia is alone in her room. Her sister tells us. There is only one door, and it goes into the corridor. The sisters always lock their doors. There is a window and a chimney, but they have bars on them. How can anyone get in?
Yes,
Holmes says.
and we must remember the strange whistling, the metallic noise, and Julia's last words. Can the gypsies be guilty? They sometimes wear bands around their heads, and those bands have speckles or marks on them.
A band is also a number of people.
Watson says quietly.
That's true.
Holmes says.
Royalette is very friendly with the gypsies. He also loses money when his stepdaughters marry. That's important.
Helen speaks of a metallic noise. Is it perhaps the noise of something against the metal bars on the window?
Watson asks.
I don't know, but we need to see those bedrooms quickly.
Holmes says. Just then, the door opens suddenly, and a very big man comes quickly into the room. He is wearing a tall black hat, and he has a cane in his hand. His big face is red with the sun, and he looks very angry.
"Which of you is Holmes?"
he asks angrily.
That is my name, sir.
Holmes answers quietly.
But who are you?
"I am Dr. Grimsby Royalette of Stoke Moran."
The big man answers.
Are you? Then please sit down.
Holmes says.
"No!
Royalette cries.
I want to know about my stepdaughter. What is she saying about me?"
She isn't saying anything.
Holmes says.
"Don't play with me, sir."
Royalette cries angrily.
"I'm an important man. I know about Miss Stoner, and I know all about you."
Holmes smiles.
That's interesting. But I must work now, and you must leave. Please close the door after you.
Royalette does not leave. He walks to the chimney and takes the metal poker in his hands. He bends it quickly with his two big hands. Then he throws it down at his feet.
I'm leaving because I want to leave, not because you tell me, he cries angrily. Be careful, Mr. Holmes.
Then he walks out of the room, looking all the time at Holmes.
My poor poker,
Holmes says quietly, walking to the chimney. He is not a big man, but he takes the poker and quickly unbends it again. Watson's mouth opens, and Holmes begins to laugh.
I'm not afraid of Royalette, Watson. But I need to know something about his wife's will. I'm going out now.
At 1 o'clock, Holmes comes back, and he looks much happier. He has a paper in his hand with numbers on it.
Look, Watson, this is the money from the dead wife's will. It's about £750 in today's money. £250 goes to Julia, and £250 to Helen when they marry. That leaves very little for Dr. Roylott. Is he our killer? We must move quickly. Helen is right to be afraid of her stepfather.
Holmes and Watson go to Waterloo. They take a train to Leatherhead, and from there they go by trap through the country. After a few miles, Holmes suddenly looks through the trees, and he cries excitedly to his friend.
There it is, Watson. Do you see it?
Chapter 4. The Bedrooms. On a hill, the two men can see a big, old house.
Is it Stoke Moran?
Asks Watson. The driver of the trap answers him.
Yes, sir. That's Stoke Moran, the house of Dr. Grimsby Royalette.
We can walk from here.
Holmes says, and he gets down from the trap. A minute later, the two men meet Helen Stoner coming from the house. She is happy to see them, but when she learns about Roylette's visit, her face changes.
My stepfather knows about my visit to you. Oh, no.
She cries.
Don't be afraid.
Holmes says,
We are going to help you. From now, you must be very careful, and you must lock your door at all times. Now, take us to the house.
They arrive at the big house. Holmes looks carefully at the windows to the bedrooms on the ground floor. He looks at Helen's bedroom and the latest work there.
Is this work on your bedroom important?
He asks Helen.
No, it isn't.
Helen answers.
I don't understand it.
Let's look at the bars on your window,
says Holmes. He takes out his knife.
Perhaps I can open them.
He puts his knife to the bars, but they don't move.
No, I can't open them. Nobody can get in through here.
Next, Holmes goes into Julia's bedroom. He looks slowly at everything. It is a little room without much furniture. Over the bed, there is a long bell rope.
Which room can you call with the bell rope?
Holmes asks Helen.
It looks newer than the other things.
I don't know,
says Helen.
I never need it.
Holmes takes the bell rope in his hand and pulls it. Nothing happens.
This bell rope doesn't go anywhere,
Holmes says excitedly.
Now that's interesting. Look, it begins here, just over the small opening of the ventilator.
What a strange thing!
Helen cries.
Yes,
Holmes says. He looks carefully at the ventilator.
this is also new, and it goes through to the next room. Why?
Holmes, Watson and Helen go into Dr. Roylette's room. It is bigger than Julia's room, with more furniture and a big metal safe. Holmes pulls the door of the safe, but it doesn't open.
What's in here?
Holmes asks.
My stepfather's papers.
Helen answers. Holmes smiles.
Is there perhaps a cat in there too?
Of course not.
Helen answers.
Why do you ask?
I ask because there's some milk on the safe.
Holmes says.
No, we don't have a cat. We have a cheetah and a baboon, of course.
Holmes says.
That's very little milk for a cheetah. Oh, what's this?
He walks to the bed. On it, there is a long dog lead.
What do you think of that, Watson?
Holmes asks.
Well,
Watson says.
it isn't an unusual dog lead, but why is it in a loop like that?
Holmes's face is dark.
Let's go out into the garden.
He says.
I must think.
Holmes walks up and down the garden for some minutes. Finally, he looks at Helen and he says,
You must listen carefully. Your life is in my hands.
Yes, Mr. Holmes.
Your stepfather is coming home soon. Go to your room. Watson and I are going to the village inn over there. When Royalette goes to bed, light a lamp and put it in your window. We can see it from the inn. You must then go back to your old room. Watson and I are going to stay in Julia's room tonight.
You know more about Julia's death than you are saying, I think.
Helen says sadly.
Can't you tell me anything?
No, I need to see more.
Holmes says.
But I hope to know everything very soon. Now, let's move quickly. We haven't much time.
Chapter 5. Danger. Holmes and Watson go to the inn and wait. Soon they see Dr. Royalette driving towards the house in his trap. The big man goes into the house and closes the door behind him. Holmes speaks quietly to his friend.
Do you want to come with me tonight, Watson? You can say no. There is danger in that house.
Watson smiles.
I'm not afraid, Holmes. I want to help.
Thank you, my friend.
Holmes waits for a minute, and then he says,
You know, that ventilator is not a surprise to me.
Why?
Watson asks.
Do you remember Helen's words about her sister? Julia can smell the incense from her room, and she doesn't like it. The smoke from the incense must go through a ventilator from one room to the next.
That's very good, Holmes.
And there's one more thing, Watson.
What's that, Holmes?
There is something strange about Julia's bed. Nobody can move it. It is always in that position. So the bell rope and the ventilator are always in the same position over the bed, too.
I'm beginning to understand now.
Watson cries.
We are talking here about a terrible crime.
Yes, and we are going to see terrible things tonight, I think. Let's sit and talk about happier times for a few hours.
The two men wait. At 11 o'clock, they finally see a light in the window of Julia's room.
That's Helen's lamp,
Holmes says.
Let's go.
Holmes and Watson leave the inn and walk out into the night. They go quickly across the garden towards the house. Suddenly, they see something strange running through the trees.
What's that? A child?
Watson asks, afraid. Holmes laughs quietly.
No, it's a baboon.
He answers.
What a strange family.
The two men take off their shoes and go into Julia's bedroom. Holmes moves the lamp onto the table and looks around the room. He puts his mouth near to Watson's head and he says quietly,
We must sit without light. Royalette can see it through the ventilator. Do not sleep and have your pistol near.
Holmes sits on the bed. Near him there is a cane and some matches. He puts out the lamp, and finally the room is dark. Chapter 6. The Speckled Band. It is a long, cold night. Night birds call out from time to time. Every 15 minutes, the two men hear the village clock. Suddenly, just after 3 o'clock, they see a light through the ventilator. It soon goes off. But then the men smell oil and hot metal. Someone is lighting a lamp. Nothing happens for half an hour, and then there is a strange hissing noise. When he hears this, Holmes jumps off the bed, lights a match, and begins to hit the bell rope with his cane.
You see it, Watson?
He cries. Watson hears a whistling sound, but he sees nothing, only his friend's white face. Holmes stops hitting the bell rope and looks up at the ventilator. Just then, they hear the most terrible noise. A cry from someone very angry and afraid. The cry goes up, and then, suddenly, it stops.
What is it?
Watson asks.
Take your pistol,
Says Holmes.
We are going into Dr. Roylette's room.
The men walk down the corridor, and Holmes hits Roylette's door with his cane. There is no answer. Holmes opens the door and goes into the room. Watson goes after him, his pistol in his hand. A lamp on the table lights the open door of the metal safe. Dr. Grimsby Royalette is sitting on a chair next to the table. He is wearing long night clothes. The dog lead with the loop is in one hand. His eyes are open and they are looking up. Round his head there is a strange yellow band with brown speckles on it.
It's the Speckled band,
Says Holmes. Watson walks forward a little, and at that moment, the strange yellow band begins to move too. The big head and body of a terrible snake begins to move out of Roylette's hair.
Be careful, Watson. That's the most poisonous snake in India.
Holmes cries.
It can kill a man in 10 seconds. We can do nothing for Roylette. He is dead. We must put the snake in the safe.
Holmes takes the dog lead from the dead man's hand. He throws the loop around the snake's body. Then he throws the hissing snake into the safe and closes the door.
Now, Watson, we must take Miss Stoner away from here. And then we can tell the police everything.
Helen soon hears the sad story, and she goes to stay at a friend's house in Harrow. Weeks later, the police tell her,
We're sorry about your stepfather, Miss Stoner, but snakes are dangerous animals. You can't play with them.
Helen says nothing, but now she knows about her sister's death. The day after Roylette's death, Holmes finishes the story for Dr. Watson, and he answers his friend's questions.
Now we understand Julia's last words, Watson. The poor woman sees the snake for a second before she dies and talks of the Speckled band. All the time, the danger is not coming from outside the house. It is coming from inside, from Dr. Grimsby Roylette. He is guilty, not the gypsies. Nobody can get in through the door and window, so the ventilator and the bell rope must be the answer to our terrible crime. The bell rope goes to the bed. Royalette loves his strange animals, so I begin to think perhaps the bell rope is a bridge for a small animal. It goes from his room through the ventilator into Julia's room. The chair in Roylette's room has the marks of feet on it. Royalette stands on it with the snake in his hands, and then he puts the animal through the ventilator. The snake's poison kills quickly. The marks from its mouth are very small, so the police do not find them. Of course, Grimsby must bring the snake back to his room later, and so we have the whistle and the milk. Grimsby teaches his animals well. The metallic noise is the door of the safe closing on the snake. Perhaps the snake doesn't kill on the first night, but sooner or later it must kill, and poor Julia must die. On the night of Grimsby's death, I hear the hiss of the snake. I light a match and quickly hit the animal.
Then it goes through the ventilator
Watson says.
and kills Dr. Roylett.
That's right.
Holmes says.
Grimsby's animal finally kills its teacher. Am I also Grimsby's killer, Watson? Perhaps I am, but I don't feel very bad about it. I'm going to sleep well tonight, my friend.
Me too.
Watson smiles.